think most of you will know that she had a rich and storied career in business, philanthropy, and academia. Dr. Astrid Tuminez became the 7th president of Utah Valley University just 1 year ago in 2018. She's the first woman to serve full-time as UVU's president. She was raised in the slums of Philippines. Tuminez rose to become a world leader in the fields of technology, political science, and most recently serving as an executive in Microsoft's office. She is a former vice dean of research and assistant dean of executive education at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy, National University of Singapore. Will you please join me in welcoming who you and I know as President Tuminez, but today you'll see her as a new character. Please, President Tuminez.
To change back into the presidential character. Okay. All right.
Okay, while she's changing, we'll take this time to drop the screen so we're ready for her to come.
Unzip the top.
And hopefully she'll turn off her mic before she gives away any more secrets back there.
Oh, that's a really
Nope. Hopefully in the booth they can help us. She's giving away trade secrets right now as we speak. Okay, any questions from the students today? We have several of you. Oh, here she's back. We'll turn right over to her. Let's get her mic back on.
So this is, if I were a true green man, this would be so bad right now because you know my identity. But how are you? How are you feeling? Happy Halloween! And I think, who's in costume here? I don't have my glasses, I can't see. Who's in costume? I hope a few people are in costume. So I'm actually going to get my glasses. Hold on. Andrew. Where's Andrew? he'll show up. Andrew, my glasses are somewhere. I forgot. Excuse me. Hello? All right, I'm ready this time to give my lecture. So thank you for being here. And last year I gave a lecture to this same forum, and I decided I'm a little bit tired of listening to myself say the same things. I changed it a little bit this year, although there is an overlap. And I'm talking about the business about how many of you are business school students? So the majority, who is not a business school student here? Okay, there are a few. When I was studying Russian literature as an undergraduate, and when I did my Ph.D. in political science, my master's degree in Soviet studies, I actually looked down on business. This is how prejudiced I was. When I graduated from Harvard University, the Harvard Business School students were right next to me, and when it was their turn to stand, they waved. What do you think they waved? In the air. Dollars. And I kind of looked at them and I thought, oh, they have no souls. So later in life, around 1998, when my field of study, the Soviet Union, had changed utterly, and a lot of the game that was happening was all about marketizing and setting up companies and issuing stocks and bonds, I realized that my education was severely lacking. And so it was at that point in time I decided to go into investment banking so I could learn about how money works, how we create value, how you make money, how you spend money, how you invest money, all very critical skills. And I gained new respect for entrepreneurs. I later on became a venture capitalist in biotechnology for AIG Global Investment on Wall Street. So I begin with that to say that at UVU, as you know, we say come as you are, UVU is a place for you. There is room here for everyone, and that the fields of knowledge here should interact. You should have a curiosity. If you're a literature major, have a curiosity about business. Business students have a curiosity about the arts. Arts have a curiosity about coding, because the world that you're going to work in is going to demand all of these things from you. So, I am really thrilled. I am the president of this university now for 14 months. I love green. I am very proud of this institution and very proud of all of you who have chosen to come to UVU. And I say the word chosen deliberately because some people say, well, I just go to UVU. I think that's the wrong thing. So we ought to be very proud of this institution that we are in. Now it is a cliche today to say that we live in a world of great change and disruption. Are you okay with the sound? There's a little bit of an echo or a thing behind. I can change microphones. Does it bother anyone?
Okay.
Okay. So we live in a world of change, and the next few pictures I'm going to show are actually from Microsoft, because I worked for Microsoft as head of corporate external and legal affairs for 6 years in Southeast Asia before coming to UVU. And one of the things that we like to talk about in that sphere of work and technology is industrial revolutions. You've heard of the fourth industrial revolution? Raise your hand. And I'll talk about it more in a minute. So as we talk about industrial revolutions, it's time of change and technological disruption. Everything we do, the way we live, work, and play today is very different from when I was a student 30 years ago at Brigham Young University. But of course, industrial revolutions have a history, and the first one, back in the 1700s to early 1800s, had to do with water and steam. And because of water and steam and new ways of using water and steam, what happened? Humanity invented machines that could run faster than horses, as you see in this picture. And that changed everything. That changed communication, that changed logistics, that changed people's ideas of distance, what you can do. And then later, in the 1800s, another industrial revolution happened, this time having to do with electricity, mechanized production, and so on. The picture that you see here was taken in 1905 in New York City. I lived in New York for 13 years. This is on a corner of Broadway. You see the Flatiron building. There's an iconic building. And what do you see here? Tell me what you see. Shout it out.
Horse and buggy.
Horses and buggies, horses and buggies. This was a point in time when that was primarily how people got around. And 25% of America's agricultural output was used to feed horses. Fast forward 20 years later, a picture taken at the very same corner, and what do you see? Cars, not a single buggy, not a single buggy. So the second industrial revolution, not only we now have machines that could run faster than horses, but horses were taken out of the equation. So if your job was feeding horses or cleaning horses or housing horses, what would have happened to your job? Kaput, no more. At the same time, what new jobs do you think were created as you see the automobile here? Name me at least 2 industries that might have arisen.
Mechanic shops.
What?
Mechanic shops.
Shops, mechanic shops, of course the whole automobile production. Consumer finance. Consumer finance was born because automobiles are expensive. So most people wouldn't pay for them in cash, they paid for them with credit. So entirely new industries were born. So when we talk about change and disruption and people get very nervous, I like to think that we don't need to get nervous. That's why you are at UVU, because you are supposed to gain skills and competencies and learn how to get along and to problem solve, things that we will need as we move on to the next phase of working. What happened? Okay, so then the next industrial revolution, the third one, was powered up by new inventions. This time it's not water or steam or electricity. It's the microprocessor. So all of you now, I see you have your laptops out, you have phones as well. You have more computing power in your hand than entire companies did 30 years ago. And I remember when I had my first big job in Moscow in the Soviet Union, and I used to carry a laptop that weighed, how much do you think? It weighed 16 pounds. It was like 18% of my body weight or 20% of my body weight. And I would lug that thing in the Frankfurt airport and in Moscow, and I was so proud that I had high tech and I had this laptop. Of course, we know today the phone alone is unbelievable, the internet and the phone. So that's the third industrial revolution, and segueing into the fourth industrial revolution where we are today. The single most important invention powering this industrial revolution today is the cloud. Unlimited computing power. So whether you are trying to discover new drugs in pharmaceuticals, or you have a search engine like Google, or your enterprise has massive amounts of data like a Facebook, or at the university, we have a lot of data, we have our email, all of that could be stored on the cloud. All of that could be processed on the cloud. So massive, unlimited computing power. Sometimes people say they call it the hyper-scale cloud. So because of this, a lot of walls have come tumbling down. If you have an idea today that's brilliant, you could just put it on YouTube. You could create your own website. You can broadcast to the world. So for good or ill, we can do many things with this technology. And as I mentioned earlier, the way that we live, the way that we learn, the way that we work. When I was at Microsoft, there was no requirement ever to be in the office unless there was a real reason and I was running a meeting. Otherwise, I can work in my pajamas, I can work at a club, I can work in a taxi, I could work in a villa in Bali. So all of this is amazing change. Now, even as we contemplate this change, there are things that worry people. One of it is jobs. You know, what will happen? Because for many of you, the jobs that you will have don't even exist today. So the world that we face is at once changing faster, more connected. There's a lot of information, but what you do with that information and how you become productive, these are all questions that are out there. And how do you prepare now for the jobs that may not even exist? So what I'd like to do is share with you some of the lessons that I've learned from my own life. And obviously I'm only a case of one, but I hope that some of these experiences will be generalizable. And then we will then spend a little bit of time having a Q&A. So I think an important question to ask is, what is merely fashionable today? We could whittle away our entire lives on our mobile phones. And I have a 17-year-old son, and we're constantly, debating this. And I have a 10-year-old son who knows he will never get a phone. Actually, he will get a phone, but I'm going to wait till he's 18. Actually, I told him, Leo, you can have a phone once you have body odor. So every year he asks me, Mom, do I have body odor yet? So what is merely fashionable, the things that are kind of hip today, if you're a hipster, and what are the things that have lasting value as each of you prepare for your work and for your life? Being a UVU is not just about preparing you for work, it is preparing you for life, because you are at this great university where you are learning but also getting to know people and also learning to cope with many different things that come your way. So I posted some things here. I think technology will always be here and it will change. And of course the big thing today is artificial intelligence and this question of how we preserve what is human. How do we preserve fairness and transparency when you could have a lot of things that's being automated and our data is everywhere, and some of this data could be used in prejudicial ways, like to block people from getting credit. So how do we ensure that even as artificial intelligence takes over a lot of the things we do, that we preserve the best about being human? You've heard of STEM, right? Science, technology, engineering, mathematics. And sometimes STEM is presented as sort of the magic. We just need to educate students in STEM and everything will be great. They'll all have great jobs and they'll have happy lives. And I believe that is true to a certain extent, but the reason the A is there in STEAM and the reason I put humanities up there is that I believe very much that the arts, poetry, dance, theater, books, novels, all of these are very important in education because you need a well-rounded person. And if you are highly technical, I would challenge you to do things or learn things that are not technical, philosophy, literature, because when you look at success in the workplace, the narrow technical skills alone do not get people to the top tiers of management or leadership. You often will need both. And I think, again, in a world that is so tech-driven, we need to remember who we are as humans, and the arts and the humanities do that for us. There are things that communication. Are you guys focused on your writing skills and your speaking skills? Those are very important. The ability to collaborate. When you do class projects and you think, I don't like this person, but I must still work with them, that's how it also works in the real world. So the ability to solve problems, not be the problem, but to solve problems is important. Character. What do we mean by character? Tell me what we mean by character. You have a word? Just throw me a word that has to do with character. Honesty, being honest. What else? Values. Being hardworking. Those things never go out of style. And they are critical. They are the bedrock of leadership. So I think those things never go out of style. Service as well. So to lead and to serve, I think those are the things that you and I need to think about as we deal with this world of massive change, massive disruption, a lot of hype, a lot of trendiness, and where is our own core? I think whatever you do, whether that be in business or nonprofits or in politics, some of these things never go out of style, so we must remember that. So I'll share a few life work lessons, and by the way, what time am I supposed to stop? What time do I stop to give time for Q&A?
Well, we're hard stopped at 12:20, President. If you want to have Q&A at 12:10 or 12:05.
Okay, so I'll try to speed through some of this. So these are some life work lessons that I want to share with you. I was born in a farming village, and then I was raised, starting at the age of 2, my family moved to the slums, so I was raised in a hut until I was 14 years old. My father made about $48, $49 a month, the equivalent, for him and for 7 children. And my mother left when I was 5, so think for a moment about living like this or growing up like this. And I remember talking to some children at Singapore American School, very expensive school. The tuition in grade school is $37,000 a year. So these kids have never known poverty, and they were studying poverty. So I talked to them about what it's like to be their age and grow up like this, where you don't have water, you don't have electricity. There are typhoons every year, and you think your hut is going to crumble and fall into the waves, and you're just going to drown. So one of the things that I learned from this is, from an early age, I learned that life can be hard. So I think that's a key lesson for work and for life, that things can get hard and they can be hard. The important thing is not that it's hard, but what we do about it. How do we become problem solvers? So my 6 siblings and I had to invent toys. We used paper, we used detritus like jars we found on the beach. We were just inventive and creative, and that is a really important skill, because as problems are thrown at you right now as students, you have to manage working to earn money to pay your tuition, you have hard classes, you have relationship problems. Do you have relationship problems? Am I the only one with relationship problems? I've been married 31 years, we've solved it all. Anyway, so life can be hard. Embrace it. Embrace it. And be happy about it, because that will never change. And so the only question is what you do about it. How do you become a problem solver? Second lesson, learn for keeps. I was illiterate when I started school, and learning to sound letters and learning to know the difference between 0 and 100 changed my entire life. My world from the village to the slums completely opened up, because I could pick up a magazine and read about New York City. I could pick up a book, Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, and learn about detective work. Oh, kids can be detectives, although I guess that was fiction. So opening your worlds, learn for keeps. Don't be passive in your class. Don't think, I'm just going to get through this because I don't like this professor. Own it. Whether you like the professor or not, whether the professor is boring or lively, whether life-changing or just, blah, own it. Because you are here. You are here. Like right now, you are here in front of me. You got to own what you're hearing today. So own your time. Own your learning. For me, education was the life-changing variable that opened everything in my life. Another insight, take the biggest, baddest job that's offered to you. Often we are socialized to be afraid. We are socialized, and when you are as poor as I was so socialized to be afraid of everything. The first big job that came my way happened when I was still a student at MIT. I was married, I'd been married 3 years, and the job offer was from Harvard University to run a project in Moscow, in the Soviet Union. And I was not sure about what to write my thesis about, because the Soviet Union was changing and it looked like it was going to implode. My husband was going to start his legal career in New York City. He just finished Harvard Law School. And I was at the point in time where everybody told me, you can't do this. You can't possibly go to Moscow because your husband is in New York. So I negotiated with Harvard. I said, I will go to Russia, but you pay for my ticket. Every 6 weeks, I have to go to New York City and visit my husband. And we made that work. Again, it was hard. We made that work, but this was a very big, very bad job. I got to work with the foreign minister, Edward Shevardnadze. I got to work with Mikhail Gorbachev, who, if you know history, changed the entire world, ended the Cold War, negotiated, made possible some of the biggest disarmament agreements with Ronald Reagan, some of the biggest that we have ever seen on nuclear weapons. And this job set me up for the rest of everything that happened to me. Because all of a sudden, I was able to have responsibilities that nobody got in their 20s. I managed to network with leaders, and I became an interesting person. Doing something like this makes you an interesting person. So don't be afraid. Try to make it work when somebody offers you something big and dark. I already alluded earlier to the fact that I looked down on business, being a humanities and social science person. And my awakening came in 1998, as all of the state-owned companies in Russia were becoming private, and I didn't understand how stocks work, how bonds work, how financing worked. And so I challenged myself to get out of my comfort zone. I applied for jobs to be an investment banker. Even though I knew nothing about investment banking. How many of you want to be an investment banker here? Only one? Well, it used to be such a popular area to be in. And what I did was I interviewed with the big banks. I was able, through my contacts, to get interviews at Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, and SBC Warburg. Goldman Sachs didn't offer me a job. Morgan Stanley did, and SBC Warburg. And I had to get my Series 7 license and Series 63, I think, or 65, because I was going to become a stockbroker on Russian equities. I took a job with SBC Warburg because they had bought a bank in Russia. And I figured that I could use my knowledge of Russia. I had a Ph.D. and I had written a book, and I could use that to then become an equities salesperson as well as a researcher. And so I did that, and then what happened was the Russian ruble collapsed. You may not remember that. Who was alive in 1998? Like, were you babies though? The Russian ruble collapsed. So that's like the dollar. If the dollar collapsed, tomorrow every dollar will be worth 1 cent or less. So people who had saved their entire, life savings, 10,000 rubles, that became worthless overnight. And so my stint became very short, but I learned a few things, and then I parlayed that into my next job, which was for AIG Global Investment. I did biotech investing, venture capital, and I was very lucky there. But the lesson here is when I was interviewing for these jobs in banking, I would say to the executives, you can ask me anything except about banking. So think for a moment how weird that was. That I went to Vikram Pandit, number 5 in Morgan Stanley at the time, later became CEO of Citibank. And I said to Vikram Pandit, ask me any question, but not about banking, because I know nothing about banking. So know what you don't know. And it makes people kind of, nervous, but if you can persuade them that you know other things, that you're willing to work harder than anybody else and learn fast, they will give you that opportunity. So I was very lucky I had that opportunity. And then another interesting job that came my way after Wall Street was I was going to take a sabbatical for a year and watch movies and read novels for an entire year. And it lasted all of 2 weeks. This is after 9/11. The George Bush White House is very concerned about Al-Qaeda infiltration of the Muslim insurgency in the southern Philippines. And so I was 2 weeks into my sabbatical and I got this call. And of course, I always say yes. You know, I have 3 criteria. Is it interesting? Am I going to learn a lot? Will it pay me enough money? And do I like the people that I will work with? Those are my criteria. So I said yes. And what happened was, after living in America for so long, I got to return on a pretty frequent basis to the Philippines, but the southern Philippines, where the Muslim minority lives. And I knew nothing about them because I was raised a Christian with a majority population. This was a very interesting homecoming for me. So I thought that I knew who I was. I thought that I knew this country that I came from, but I didn't. Because I learned that our Muslim population had been abused for hundreds of years, that their lands had been taken from them, their religion disparaged, and you could even go to Manila and have your name as Abdullah. You're going to have to take on Benji or Mike. So I learned this kind of empathy, that in problem solving, you have to empathize with people's stories. And it helped me understand my own heritage as a Filipino. So you may think you know who you are, but you may not. You know, later on in life, you will have these experiences. Say yes to them, because they will help you discover things about yourself. Travel, I say that metaphorically and literally. Travel. It's not enough to see things on our screen. But if that's the best you can do, learn anyway. You can travel in your mind too, so travel. I lived in Asia for the last 13 years, and that was an amazing opportunity because I saw this redistribution of economic power around the world. You cannot now be a serious global player without taking China into account. China and India, between them, have how many? Tell me how many people these 2 countries have. Say it out loud. Maybe 2.3 billion. Huge markets, huge. America is minuscule. So not minuscule, big too, but not that size. And if you think about China having that big of a domestic market, there are many, many things that they can do. So this redistribution of power is an important thing to understand. So when I say travel, learn about cultures, be curious. It doesn't matter where you're from. You could be from rural Utah, from California, Nevada, it doesn't matter. Be curious. Always ask, what does this thing look like to other people? How do they live? What do they think? What are their beliefs? It will help you be a better team member, a better problem solver, and a better leader. This piece of advice, I started giving this. I remember the moment I started giving this advice. It was in Thailand. I was talking to a room full of women in tech, and I was talking about leadership. And they said, you know, what would you advise us? They said about our relationships, because, you know, family is so important. So it occurred to me there, I said, don't marry a jerk, but then also don't be a jerk. And I put, you know, this gentleman here? Who is this? Albert Einstein. He had a terrible relationship with his first wife. Well, first they were in love, and they got married, and they had a terrible relationship. And she was herself a physicist. She was brilliant. And he gave her this memo. Could you just read that for a couple seconds? This is true. He gave her this memo about how they were going to manage their relationship. So the most important person, I think, that will be with you in your life and work journey is your partner or your spouse. So do not marry a jerk, don't be a jerk. And a jerk, I was asked to define what a jerk was. And I defined it as a person who thinks that only her dreams or his dreams matter, but yours don't. So that, I think, is a pretty good definition. If you have dreams in life, you want to have the chance for your partner and your spouse where you can be supportive of each other. Have a personal board of directors. What do I mean by this? Companies have boards of directors, and these boards are responsible for governance. They have expertise, they care about the company in theory. It doesn't always happen. But have your own personal board. These are the people who will stick with you, who will love you but also tell you the truth about yourself. Because sometimes you will be a jerk. You can't help it. And you need somebody to tell you, slow down. Here's how your behavior is going to hurt you and hurt others. But they will also give you opportunities. They will also mentor you. They will also be there listening to you when you need someone who has to listen. Keep a beginner's mind. This is a Buddhist concept, Zen Buddhism. An expert's mind has all the answers. A beginner's mind can always learn. So my career has spanned technology, academia, peace negotiations, technology. And I think what has helped me is I deliberately try to keep an open mind. That I'm very confident in the things that I do know, but I'm always open to the things that I don't know. And that open mind can receive wisdom. It can receive knowledge. It can receive inspiration. It can receive insight. But if you think you're an expert at everything, you will limit yourself. Finally, I think these are my last couple of slides. You will go through this. This sculpture is called Grief. And they stopped me in my tracks when I saw it in the National Gallery in Singapore. This figure is doubled over in pain. How many of you have had setbacks in your life? How many of you have had real tragedy? The kind that rips you apart. If you haven't yet experienced it, thank you for raising your hand and sharing that you have been through that. These will happen. There will be small failures and there will be big failures. There will be small betrayals and big betrayals. There will be small shames and big shames. You will find yourself completely untethered. And I think it is so important that you know where your strength is going to come from. Right? For me, it's dark chocolate. I always have a bar in my office. And if you ever peek through my window and you see that I am nibbling on hard chocolate, that means I'm having a really bad day. Or I need something to boost me. Family, sports, I learned to wakeboard when I lived in Hong Kong. And I thought the person who suggested this to me was crazy because I was, in my 40s, and I thought, that's only like 18-year-old guys who are doing that. And I loved it so much. I loved it. And when I was on the water, wakeboarding, it just felt like I was so free. And I would just get out of that activity feeling great. I can tackle whatever is coming my way. So know where your strength comes from, know how to replenish it. And part of replenishing your strength is asking the right questions. What is motivating you? Is it just money? Is it a fakery of life that you have to post on your social media? If any of us right now believe in that kind of fakery, we are doomed. What is it that is you? Ask the right questions. And I love the story of the Good Samaritan because there were two failures in this story. So you have the victim, the Samaritan, on his way to the big city who gets beaten to a pulp and is going to die. And the first person who walks by is a priest. And the priest asks the wrong question. If I stop, what will happen to me? I'll be late. I have an important meeting. The Levite also said, if I stop, I might get condemned because this Samaritan is not even a friend to my people. This Samaritan is an enemy. So if I stop, what will happen to me? The wrong question. Martin Luther King said the right question was asked by the Good Samaritan. Sorry, the victim was a Samaritan and a Jew. Wait, no, the victim was a Jew. So the Good Samaritan asked the right question, which is that if I don't help this man, what will happen to him? If I, as a president of this university, if I don't help you, what will happen to you? If I don't help faculty, what will happen to them? I can't ask what will happen to me because that's the wrong question. So if you ask this question, I am very confident you will replenish your strength and your success will be the kind of success that is renewable and that is real. And life is a journey. On Halloween we get dressed up because life is a journey, and sometimes it's good to know what it feels like not to breathe behind the green man mask. I don't think I want their job. So, but I'm very thankful to them. I love what they bring to this institution. So thank you very much. We have a few minutes for Q&A. Yes? Please introduce yourself.
I'm Jacob. I'm an international business student. And I was just wondering, when you went to Russia, were you in any way
Okay. When I went to Russia, was I in any way fearful for my safety? A little bit, but not too much. In fact, Russia became more dangerous later as market reforms began because there was such a rapacious run for money. And so there was a time when people really were shooting each other. One of my friends who was a parliamentarian was shot in her elevator because they didn't like her being a democratic reformer. So I was worried, but you know, also in your 20s, you're a little bit like, I'm immortal. How many of you feel that way? Yeah, and at the time, there were no taxis in the Soviet Union. In order to get a taxi ride, you just flag any car on the street. And then you just pay them. That's how people kind of moonlit to have extra income. And you know, my husband, my in-laws, everybody thought it was so dangerous, but I did that all the time. You know, nothing happened to me. So I got more worried later when the Soviet government fell apart and there was a bit of lawlessness and real violence and a lot of guns, and so I worried a little bit. But some of these things that we do, like if you ever go to a country where, you know, that's very dangerous, like Syria today, of course, I would not do haphazard things. I would not be taking unnecessary risks, although when you're young, sometimes that happens too. But be careful. My 3 children know, I have 3 children, they know that every morning when they're little, I say 3 things to them: be safe, be smart, be happy. And I begin with be safe. I always tell them be safe because if something happens to you, you can't do any of the rest of it. So don't take unnecessary risks. Other questions? Oh, yes?
Hi, my name's Lane Bagley. I just have a question for you as you progress through academia and different business. Seeing now you take this role as president. Congratulations. Do you still find time to do the research, writing, and publishing, or as the president? And I see you at a lot of events.
Yes.
But do you still kind of do that, or is that just out the window with all the other?
That is a very painful question. I say that I used to be smart. No, so as an administrator, this is like a 24/7 job. But I am a reader. So I am a voracious reader. In any given year, I know I can read a lot of books in any given year. I can read a book. Sometimes it's a really gripping book. I'll read it till 3 in the morning. So my ritual is that every night I read. And I kind of read a wide array of literature. I read a lot of novels. I read poetry. I read a lot about higher education and what's happening in higher education. I read about technology. I just pick up a lot of books. So that helps me, kind of, not as a researcher, but at least it helps me stay smart, if I can say that. Just be in the current of what's going on and replenish my own thinking. And then the other thing that I do right now, Dean Norm Wright knows this, I am preparing to teach a class on leadership online next fall semester. And what it's forced me now is I've worked on my 10 modules, and I have read all these books because I taught a lot of leadership, executive education. I've done that everywhere in Asia, also for the Hall International Business School in London. And so now, this is really actually hard, so I do it at night. But it's hard and wonderful at the same time because I get to reread books that I've already read and then get caught up on the literature. And then think of creative ways to teach, because I think the classroom should be compelling. And we have technology today to power up some of the things that we do. Publishing, the last thoughtful piece I wrote was probably, I don't know, 7, 8 years ago. I used to still write on the former Soviet Union. I blog, but they're not research pieces. So it's harder, but I hope that I am able to contribute in other ways and contribute to ideas as well as the practice of ideas and theories. Questions maybe from another part of the room? How about here? Any questions? Don't be shy. All right, 3 hands. First from the back. You, yes, please.
Okay. My name's Misty. I am a finance major. I was just wondering, have you ever taken on a challenging job that maybe you regretted, or you thought, oh shoot, perhaps I shouldn't have juggled this along with
Yes.
something else I'm dealing with?
So there were 2 jobs I immediately regretted taking. The first one was the Wall Street job, because I just don't like looking at corporate financial statements. I mean, I did not love it. And then So the first 6 months were a real struggle, but I was actually assigned in credit risk at the beginning. And that was very smart of AIG because they thought that by having me do credit risk analysis of sovereign obligors, and I was a Ph.D. in political science, I could definitely deploy what I know about politics, economics, and history, but then I had to analyze the bonds and their ratios, and they trained me. So that was very, very helpful. So working hard. And eventually, then after a year of credit risk, they said to me, you can pick anything you want to be in. So I'm so glad that even though I regretted it and I thought this is just not me, but I stuck with it. And within a year, they rewarded me and told me I could pick anything. And that's when I got to pick private equity, venture in biotech. And biotech is even more exciting today. It's very complex, but it is so exciting because all the new drugs, all the new medical devices, intellectual property rights in the medical industry, all of that is just a field of learning. And I had to audit some courses in neuroscience and molecular biology so I could have a vocabulary. But I met people who were amazing. They would have an MD, PhD, and MBA, one person with all those degrees. So I regretted it initially, but then it worked out. The second thing that I also regretted was Microsoft, because I came from a university as a vice dean. I had this cavernous office. I had so many assistants. And I got to Microsoft, and they said to me, here's the key, here's the combination to your locker. No office, no secretary. And I was so lost, and I didn't understand the lingo. I didn't understand what they were talking about. Have any of you heard the term boss attach? So you wouldn't even know, because when you pirate Microsoft software, one of the measurements is the boss attach, operating system, attached to the devices. So I had to, it was very, very humbling, and it's even more humbling when you're coming from a field you already know. But I'm not a quitter. Here at UVU Wolverines, we talk about grit. We at UVU are not quitters. I came here because I'm not a quitter, and I hope you are here because you're not quitters. So again, Microsoft taught me more than any organization I'd ever worked for. More. And probably prepared me for this job as president of the university than any other job. And I stuck with it, and they invested in me, and then I learned, everything about tech. So yes, I've had those regrets. My husband was witness to all that. I'd be in tears some days, thinking, what did I take on? I am such a pretender. I'm such a charlatan. And the thing is not quitting. And the question there is, when do you quit? Well, there are also moments when you have to quit. I've quit when I was abused by the boss. That's the only time I've quit. I quit one job, and that's because the boss was abusive, and I said that's wrong, and I'm not going to do it. Let's ask the two questions quickly. Yes?
Yeah, let's go back to Russia. What time period were you there?
What time period was I in the Soviet Union? I was there, I made my first trip there in 1985 as a student, and I went back in 87 and 89. And then I lived there for about 18 months from 1990 to 92. Running that project, and then I was also doing my PhD research. So I did a lot of archival work, because right after the Soviet Union imploded, they actually opened archives to foreign researchers, and then later they closed those archives again. I got to handle amazing things like the Tsar's letters. They were all written in French. So I actually am trained in French as well, so I was able to read those letters. It was really an amazing time. So it was that period. If you want to understand the period that I lived through, watch the documentary Meeting Gorbachev.
Was there I guess, was that during the time period of Chernobyl?
Chernobyl happened after. No, sorry, that was the time Chernobyl happened while Gorbachev was still in power, yes. So I was there when the coup d'etat happened against Gorbachev. I was there during his last day in office. Yeah. So I witnessed. It's a whole different topic, so I probably don't want to get into it because we might be here for 45 minutes. So I was there during the most interesting time in that history, when an entire socio-economic political system imploded and 15 new countries were born, for good and ill. And a lot of it was horrifically traumatizing for the citizens of what was then the Soviet Union. There was a question, one more here, yes?
As international business leader, just being a woman, being Asian, and being small
Well, being a woman, being Asian, being small, so you've just insulted me. Being, so yes, I mean, I actually say that, you know, the work and life experience is very gendered, because all of those things is just not this gender, ethnicity. So my first big job being in Moscow, where, you know, it was the kind of society where one day I opened the paper and it said, secretaries wanted, please come to the interview in a short skirt. That's in the newspaper. And it didn't matter if they had a Ph.D., they asked you to make the coffee. Even until 5 years ago, somebody still asked me to make copies at a conference in Singapore. So believe me, it still happens. So your question is, what do you do? What do you do when you're small and you're female and you're Asian? Or you could say, I'm a first generation, I'm Latino, or I'm white, but my parents have no education and we are very poor. So there are all sorts of things that could be our own special package of challenges. So some of the things that helped me, of course, working for Harvard University helped, because my card said Harvard. I spoke fluent Russian, which helped. So be good at something. When you're good at something, people have to pay attention to you. They will pay attention to you. Their heads will turn. If you're a great dancer, whatever you do, you're great in business, you're great with numbers. If you can calculate numbers in your head without a calculator and spit out the answer, yes, they will pay attention to you. So be good. Work harder, run faster. And then one of the things that I learned also, and this is probably even more important to women than men, was I learned in Moscow in my 20s that when I walked into a room, and it was 98% men, half of them military, half of them the Minister of Foreign Affairs, that I had 5 minutes to establish my credibility, to control the room. And I remember my husband, every time I would return to New York, he would ask me, why are you becoming so aggressive? Why are you? And another acquaintance of mine once asked me, how is it that you learned to barge into a room? She used the term barge. And I wasn't even aware that I was barging. I just knew that I had a time limit. Women, when you ask questions, don't use the tone of voice. Is that okay? Don't. Or men and women don't say, you know, presence. Cultivate your presence is a game in your head. That when I walk here, whatever it is I know how to do, let's say I know how to make carrot cake. That's true. I can't make anything else, but I know how to make carrot cake. I can stand here and I can speak with confidence about that. So that's what you have to do. You know what you know, and then have that game in your head. Play it ahead of time before you're out. So confidence doesn't happen in one fell swoop. It's something you cultivate. And put yourself out there. Don't be nervous. Don't be afraid. Challenge yourself. I used to get so nervous about public speaking. The first talk I gave at Harvard at the Russian Research Center, before the talk I was in the bathroom. I thought I was going to puke. And fortunately I did it. So know that even the people you think are confident, they've been there. They've had those doubts. Maybe one question from this side of the room? One last question? Yes.
I'm Ryan Larson. We were discussing a few of us are going to healthcare administration, and we've been taught that in order for us to kind of move up the ranks, we have to be willing to move. And one of our questions is, how long should we stay in a current position before really looking to move to another one? Just to does that make sense?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I don't think that there is a formula for that. What I believe is that whatever position you're in, if you're like a beginner or an assistant manager or the CEO, I think that you're always auditioning for that next job, whether you're going to stay in the same company or you're going to move to a different company laterally for a promotion, or whether you're going to change countries. So I think that you will know when you've already done everything in a position, it gets boring. And you want to move up to more responsibilities. And by the way, I think people who are mobile, who are willing to move, you do get promoted faster. And I think the rewards can be pretty high. So, because you learn so much, you begin to absorb what are the challenges and opportunities in different countries, different regulatory systems. You come back smarter as a business person and as a leader. So there is no set formula for how many years, but remember that you're always auditioning for that next thing, that next job, that next promotion. So be prepared for that. And then be willing to travel, as I said in my slide. Because the way that the world works today, that connectedness is such a big part of leadership. And you will become better, if you know how the rest of the world works. So I know that our time is up, or 1 minute over. I want to just say thank you for being here. Thank you to the Dean and Professor McDonald. Thank you for including me, because I do love interacting with students. And go out there, be great, you have it in you, and study hard. And complete. You need to complete, whether that's the 1 year, 2 year, 4 year, you need to complete. Do it for yourself. Thank you.